Welcome back to the program. With me now, the Liberal Party's Melissa Price and Labor frontbencher Nick Champion. Melissa, first to you. We've had the Finance Minister, the Prime Minister also saying this capital gains tax proposal is not something the government's supporting, knocking it on the head. Well, if you keep knocking every proposal on the head, where do you find the revenue that the Treasurer is looking for?
Yeah, well, I think the fact is that we've got a good plan on the table, and it'd be Nick and his mates that, if they could sign up to it, that'd be a good thing. But in terms of what you're discussing, the capital gains, I've only read what's been in the paper today, and when I looked at what I've read, it's effectively revenue raising. So I'm not quite sure how that helps us with our home ownership issues that we face.
Well, Nick Champion, obviously Labor's been proposing this for some time. The government not doing the backflip, as reported today. It's been rejected by Matthias Cormann, as I say very clearly. The Prime Minister also indicating this is not where the government's heading.
Well, this is all at the centre of the government's division, isn't it? I mean, we now have a report, and Phil Curry's a pretty good journo.
Very good.
Very good journo. Very good journo. Doesn't, good with his sources. And so you sort of think, well, why would this appear in the paper one day only to be knocked on the head very quickly the next day? And it can only be for one reason, that there's division, not just on personality grounds within the government, but on policy grounds and on how to, meet the economic challenges of the nation.
But if there's division, the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister knocked it on the head today and said it's not happening.
Well, Kieran, you can't have your Prime Minister and your Treasurer and your Finance Minister at odds publicly, really. I mean, there's a pretty thin veil. We can all see through it. You sort of just wonder how long this government can sort of creak along, divided, not just divided in terms of its personnel and how it operates, but also divided on how to meet the economic challenges of the country.
Melissa Price, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's complete rubbish. Look, I have no doubt that, the Treasurer, I'm not the Treasurer, I'm not the Assistant Treasurer, I have no doubt that they're working on the issues relating to home ownership, and to say that this is, some sort of leak one day and then squash the next day to cause damage, I think is rubbish.
I want to ask Nick Champion about where Labor's at with the renewable energy target. Is it a target, an ambition, a goal, a vision? What is it?
Well, what we know about renewable energy is that this is a revolution that's happening anyway, Kieran. You only have to go down any suburban street, see all the solar panels on the roofs. No one's forcing them to put them up. People are putting them up voluntarily. So this is a revolution that's happening in every suburban street, and it's happening around the world. Germany, the UK, all heavily investing in renewables. China, heavily investing in renewable. This would unleash $48 billion worth of new investment, these sorts of targets, these sorts of policies, and that will lower electricity prices.
But the confusion, I think, comes down to the fact that, on the one hand, it's called your 2030 renewable energy target ambition. I don't know what you're calling it, but then it's separate to the actual renewable energy target policy, which provides subsidies. It's all a bit confusing, isn't it?
Well, I think what you can do is, what investors look for is long-term signals about where to invest. They're already turning away from coal. We know that nobody will build a new coal plant in Australia. No investor, no company will build a new coal plant. They're all ageing infrastructure. The one in Port Augusta was so old it was knocked down. The mine that supported it was pretty much tapped out. It had brown coal that had been opened by Playford in the 1940s, 1950s. So, really what we're looking here is an ageing infrastructure from a previous generation of investment, and what we've got to do as a country is deal with the problems of the electricity grid, and there are problems with privatisation, disaggregation of the system, the way the market's operating. They're all really real problems, and we've got to plug in all of this new investment. Are
you comfortable with that the Labor Party's saying it's a signal to the industry that you should invest in this, even though it's not a definitive, modelled, priced policy?
What I do know is that, WA Labor found very quickly that talking about a 50% renewal target was actually not going to be good for them to be elected. So one day it was there and the next day it was gone. And of course, I suppose in Western Australia, we're not connected to the grid, so it is a very different issue. We don't have a plan B. We can't rely upon our friends in South Australia who can rely upon the East Coast. We have to be self-sufficient. In terms of coal, being, yesterday's source of fuel, that is rubbish. We had a very good presentation from ExxonMobil yesterday talking about about the global demand for energy out to 2040, and coal has still got a big part to play in terms of how we actually keep the lights on and keep businesses operating and keep the air conditioning going when it's hot. But, you know, we need to be mature and adult about what the mix is. You know, it has to be reliable, it has to be affordable. I mean, this is the biggest issue. You know, the cost of electricity is hitting, you know, the hip pockets of everyday Australians as we speak.
Well, that's very true, and we've seen spikes even in states where there's not a big prevalence of renewable energy, but it is true as well, isn't it, in South Australia, that it is more vulnerable? Do you accept that the regulator found that?
Just on the West Australian situation, the West Australian government is about to take their power system down the journey of the South Australian one, which is privatisation and disaggregation. And you were very lucky to be not in the Australian energy market, right? Because in actual fact, being segregated from it and having state-run electricity systems, actually a pretty good system, you know, place to be. The difficulty we have is we now have this massive upsurge in solar power. And like I said, this is not a government-run thing. No politician can stop it. It's people putting up solar systems on their roofs. Now, there is an issue, because obviously solar's there during the day and not during the others. There's also a problem with most of the panels at the moment are north-facing rather than west-facing. So, you know, we do have to look at some of the technical issues. There's non-synchronous power. We have to get over that with a modern grid. But that is not the cause of what's happening in South Australia, which is a failure, market failure, to turn on a gas turbine and to load shed properly. So we've got a technical and engineering.
But you were right, weren't you, that the government can't direct the market regulator.
Well,
you were right in that.
I'm right about the South Australian government doesn't have that ability.
Federal government
and the federal government doesn't either. And that is a power that we should resolve together.
What's that 48? Just quickly, that $48 billion figure you spoke of, is
that's new investment.
That's $48 billion investment.
That's people
to meet that target.
No, that's people coming in with their own money and investing in things like wind farms and solar thermal and all the other technologies that are happening around the rest of the world.
Just finally, Melissa Price, if there are the advances that a lot of the people, advocates of clean energy, say there are in terms of solar, but also storage, there's a chance, isn't there, that some of the new facilities would be white elephants pretty quick?
Oh,
if they do follow the government's advice.
I do feel for my South Australian colleagues and people who live in South Australia, but in fact, these blackouts have allowed us to have this adult conversation. And I think this is a good thing for this country, that we can have this conversation about, well, what is the mix? You know, renewables have got a place, no doubt about that. Wind energy, I'm not so sure about that, but certainly solar. I live in Western Australia, we've got plenty of sun. So, you know, we need to be very mature about it, because renewables have got a place, but so is gas and so is coal.
Melissa Price and Nick Champion, good to see you both. Appreciate it. Quick break, back in just a moment.